You've covered the Cowboys for a long time. I assume you were watching it as it happened. Walk us through what your emotions were, what your reaction was at the time that Dak Prescott went down.
Yeah, Mike, I've covered so many of these, and I did participate on the conference calls with Mike McCarthy and Andy Dalton after the Cowboys' victory that felt like a loss, and that's exactly what it felt like. But you just remember all of these that Tony Romo took and went out of the game, but this was just chilling. I mean, I still have chills now. It was just horrifying, and I don't want to see the video of that again. It was just gruesome. A gruesome injury is probably the best way to put it, and you just feel so bad for Dak. I mean, he's one of the good guys in this league, and if you ever get to meet him, to get to know him, he really, truly, you will root for him because he does this league very good, and you hate to see good players go out. We want to see the best quarterbacks. We want to see the best players. We want to see the best guys in this game, and so the Cowboys won't have him the rest of the season, and his future now, I think, is very much in doubt about what happens after this year contract-wise.
Yeah, and the future is also in doubt short-term from a health standpoint. We always hear when NFL players have any type of surgery, first, the surgery was a success, and then before too long after that, the player's actually ahead of schedule in his recovery. And in many cases, that's true because professional athletes tend to heal differently, tend to rebound better to physical adversity than the rest of us. But we still need to pay attention to what happens with Dak Prescott because there are risks. To the extent that the bone did pierce through the skin, that introduces a much higher risk of infection. That's what happened to Alex Smith. There's all sorts of bacteria and other stuff on your skin that gets into your body that way, and it shouldn't be in there. And if they're not careful, and one of the things they did last night in fixing the ankle was to wash the wound thoroughly, those are all things we need to be concerned about as the days and weeks go by. The healing of the bone, was there other ligament damage? These are things that they're not going to advertise right out of the gates. These are things that they're going to be very circumspect about. But, Charean, we've got months before the next wave of decisions need to be made, but those months are going to go by quickly, and running parallel to the passage of time, the recovery or lack thereof from Dak Prescott, which is really going to shape the decisions that eventually are made.
Yeah, no question. And, Mike, this is a guy that was still on track despite passing for less than 200 yards before he went out yesterday. He was on track to break the NFL record to pass for almost 6,000 yards. He was passing for almost 400 yards a game and just looked outstanding week in and week out. And, yes, he had a few turnovers here and there, but, you know, he was really playing at a high level. And I think if the Cowboys could have turned it around and played better on defense, this is a guy you might have been talking about alongside with Josh Allen and Russell Wilson for MVP candidates. And we obviously weren't because of the Cowboys' record, but he had just put up some huge yards and was earning every bit of that huge contract that he was going to get after the season, of course, playing this year under the franchise tag at $31.4 million. So the future, yes, very much in doubt. The Cowboys obviously want him on their team. Stephen Jones reiterated that today. He is our future, and the Cowboys still believe in him. But there are going to be questions. I mean, how can you not have questions considering the injury that he just had?
Yeah, and he would have been the offensive player of the year if he'd have stayed on pace. As of last week, we were talking about 25% of the season done. He was on pace for 6.760. It was one of those things where I had to do the math 3 times before my brain would process the extent to which he was on pace to shatter the single-season passing yardage record of 54.77, or 57.44. I get those two mixed up for some reason. Regardless, he was on pace to do something that had never been done before, and that's the first I've even thought of it in the 24 hours since it happened, because it's such a tragic turn of events. It really forces you to reconsider everything you think about the NFL, and it's amazing that injuries like this don't happen more often, but when they do, they are devastating. Stephen Jones, the Cowboys' COO, among other titles, discussed earlier today the impact of the injury and what it means for Dak's future with the Dallas Cowboys.
That conversation with him, what was that conversation like?
How much our prayers are with him, how much we believe in him, how much we're going to miss him, but at the same time, know that he's going to come back better, stronger, better than ever. Our face of our franchise. to have him and know that he'll overcome this. He's a driven, special man.
Face of the franchise, Charean. Here's how he stays the face of the franchise. And it's very simple to identify the options. It's not going to be nearly as simple to pick one, but it's simple to identify them. After the regular season ends, the window reopens on the Cowboys signing Dak to a multi-year deal. Now, nothing stops them from negotiating a long-term deal right now. You just can't sign it until the regular season ends. From then until the deadline for application of the franchise tag, typically late February, sometimes early March, the Cowboys have the exclusive right to talk to Dak with that hammer if they choose to use it of the franchise tag a second time. So option one, sign him to a long-term deal before the window closes on using the franchise tag. Option two, use the franchise tag, and I'll include the transition tag here as well because it costs the same. 20% raise over what he made in 2020, regardless of what the salary cap does. Salary cap goes down to 175, doesn't matter. The 20% raise still applies under the CBA. That's $37.68 million, or 21.5% of the potential salary cap for next year due to the pandemic if it does drop to $175 million. That's option two. Option three, you don't get a deal done. You don't apply the franchise tag. He becomes a free agent. And maybe that's ultimately what happens. Maybe he hits the open market and other teams don't pursue him with that kind of money that we typically see free agents. And it's rarely great free agents that get to the open market. It's usually mid-level guys, but they get paid a lot of money because they're the ones available. But maybe he goes to the open market. The Cowboys see what other teams may pay, and then the Cowboys finally give him what he wants. But in the background of all of this is his health. So, again, the options are simple, but the final selection is going to be greatly complicated by how healthy he is or isn't when that franchise tag deadline rolls around next year.
And no question, they want to sign him to a long-term deal. They've been wanting to do that for the past 2 years, and they never could settle on the years. You know, Cowboys wanted 5 years. Dak wanted 4 years. He has bet on himself, and he's going to end up getting his money. The question is, how much do the Cowboys end up giving him? And do they give in and just go the 4-year route? But in my opinion, they've got to sign him to a long-term deal just for cap implications because they can do so many more things and manipulate the cap. He just can't be that big of a percentage of the cap on the franchise tag. So they've got to do something else. And at this point, I think they've got to get him signed to a long-term deal. They've got to roll the dice that he's going to come back and be the same guy that they saw this season, that they saw the season before and the season before that, that he can return to health. And you do wonder a little bit, Mike, about his running ability with this injury, because that was one of his strengths, was his ability to get outside the pocket. Is he going to be the same guy running the football and getting outside the pocket that he was before this injury?
Yeah, and, you know, that whole 4 years versus 5 years, maybe this time around Dak Prescott more amenable to 5 years because he understands that the Cowboys, assuming the risk that maybe in 2021 they're going to be paying a lot of money to a guy who isn't ready to go week one. And maybe Dak Prescott just chooses to wait. It can become like a Cam Newton type of a situation very quickly. If they can't work out a deal, he becomes a free agent. Other teams are reluctant. The Cowboys are reluctant. And Dak just decides, you know what? I'll just wait to sign until I'm healthy. And he may have to take what he can get to prove he's healthy with the Cowboys or someone else before he cashes in with the contract that he has long deserved. So, look, the bottom line is the healing of the ankle, the recovery from the injury is going to drive this discussion. The problem is there are deadlines that are going to emerge before potentially we know how healthy he is or isn't and what track he's on, and that's going to potentially change everything, whether it's the Cowboys or someone else. But there are other teams out there, and I tried to list them earlier today at PFT. Every year, there are teams looking for starting quarterbacks. And you know what? For some of these teams, they've been so desperate for so long to find somebody who can come in and play at a high level. Maybe you just roll the dice. Maybe you pay the money. You bite the bullet, and you deal with the possibility he may not be ready right away, especially if, let's say, you're Washington, and you'd love nothing more than to grab the franchise quarterback that your division rival thought they were going to have for the next 15 years.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.